What's up, my sweet bitches? What's going on? We're gonna do another Drunk Explain That today. Gonna get that episode about PC monitors today. So I got a whole fucking bottle of wine inside of me. I'm ready. Let's fucking go. Alright, so monitors. Okay, so we're talking about the history of computers here, right? You've heard myths and legends about computers that have taken up entire fucking rooms, right? Worked with punch cards, shit like that. It was around the time that we had the advent of the monitor, where PCs actually became more of a household consumer sort of thing, right? So, monitors are super easy to buy, okay? Big myth is that monitors are just one of the hardest things you can buy. It's just difficult to buy correctly because there's so much shit that you have to overcome, right? There's just a lot of stuff that you gotta worry about. But you don't have to worry about it. That's why I'm making this fucking PowerPoint. I'm making it for you, baby. Okay? I'm gonna explain it to you. I'm gonna tell you why it's so fucking easy to figure this shit out. I'm gonna explain it all to you, okay? So, here's the thing, right? So, PC Master Race. I'm a huge supporter of PCMR, but they got problems, okay? It's just a community, okay? There are people that will tell you, okay, if you're building a rig, you have to allocate so much money to it, right? Hardly when you see a build posted on the actual subreddit PC Master Race, when they give you the list of parts that actually go in the rig, they completely fucking forget the monitor. It's like it's not actually part of the build, right? Because we have this idea where when we say build, we're talking about the PC tower, right? Tower is like massive sarcasm quotes, super outdated term. Right. Your PC build should be fucking everything. I'd go even as far as to say that when you're putting a build together, you have to consider things like a desk, a chair, fucking things to go on your desk. Like it's the complete experience, right? It's an entire build that you're thinking of. So monitors definitely important. You definitely got to put a lot of thought into it. So a monitor is the thing that you look at all fucking day long. Well, I am, right? So I work in IT. I'm staring at monitors all fucking day. So I personally think, and I'm probably biased, maybe. I don't fucking know. Monitors are fucking important, okay? You're probably looking at this on a monitor right now, unless you fucking, like, printed it out or some bullshit, like, what the fuck? So, monitors are fucking important. Okay, so how much importance should I put into a monitor? And the answer is, it's the PC component that you're actively and directly using the most. Which begs the question, how much should you actually budget for it? Should you budget more than, say, a CPU, right? So you're putting together a build, you're thinking about what CPU you want to put. Would you want to cut back on backbone performance for your rig if it meant that you could get a better monitor? Well, which one are you actively using? That's really the question that you have to ask yourself. Which one do you care about the most in the most use cases? So which has the greatest influence on your enjoyment of the rig? Most cases, it's going to be the monitor, okay? That's just how it is. Not to say the CPU, you choose a better CPU, you're going to get a better gaming performance. Yeah, that can happen, right? So if you choose i7 or i5, you might have a couple more technologies inside of your rig for pushing a couple extra frames to your monitor. Could be like that, right? But the monitor is the thing that gets the most attention from your eyeballs. Okay? You can look at it like that. Shopping historically for a monitor causes a lot of anxiety for normies, okay? So why is this such a problem? It's because monitors are on such a huge price spectrum, right? So there's so many fucking monitors out there. They have all these fucking specs, and there's cheap monitors all the way down to like $60 for, and yeah, there are decent monitors you can find for $60. They're absolutely out there. And then there's also monitors which are like $900, $1,000, $1,100. And when you don't really understand what specs are going into the monitor, you're sitting there and you're trying to figure out why is there such a big price gap? Well, guess what, motherfucker? Grab your permission slip. Here we fucking go. So, what I've done for you today is I have pulled up a Newegg listing on this Asus monitor. Okay, so we're gonna run through all the bullshit that you see here in this listing. We're gonna talk about it. We're gonna discuss it. Is this shit? Who fucking knows? We're gonna know. We're gonna fucking know after fine. You know, we're gonna go through this. It's gonna be great. We're gonna make monitors great again. Here we go. So, Asus, right? So we're gonna talk about manufacturers, brands, the make of your model. So there's a lot of reputable brands out there. A lot of great brands. The one that gets me is Dell. So if you think about Dell, have you ever used a fucking Dell computer? Yeah, they're fucking bullshit, right? Dell monitors are so succulent. They're fucking amazing, okay? I can't begin to describe. They make some really fucking amazing monitors. Now, I'm not saying all the monitors they make are great. I'm not saying that by any means, but Dell makes some quality-ass monitors, fam. So, Asus, like the one we're looking at, Dell, Acer, ViewSonic, LG, BenQ, those are all huge names. HP, fucking, you know, it is kind of the same thing with Dell. You know, like if you think about a brand, you think about all the things they manufacture. Kind of like Sony, right? How Sony used to be. You think about Sony, they make so many different things. Some are shit, some are great, some are cheap, some are super fucking expensive, right? So you have to do your research on these things. But the 6 that I've listed here, all great manufacturers. They make some kick-ass monitors. There's just going to be some reputable names for you to go off of, okay? For makes in particular, you need to think about the kind of tech support that you will get on it and the kind of warranty that you will get with it. So some of the manufacturers here are a little better at handling warranty claims than others. Do your research. Find out what works for you. Personally, I don't give a shit about warranties, right? My monitors are never moving. I'm not punching monitors, I'm not like rage quitting and throwing controllers through my monitors, right? I don't have to fucking worry about scratching up monitors. I don't have kids to knock shit over, right? So I personally don't care about warranties. You might. Who the fuck knows? That's you. It's up to you, buddy. Model number. Easy peasy, right? So VZ239H, the 23 here. Pro tip, that's actually the size of the monitor. So sometimes if you're just looking at a lot of lists of makes and models of different monitors, sometimes you can kind of just glance at the model number, you can tell what size it is. So moving on, so let's talk about design. So the two things that I've picked out here in the name, frameless and ultra slim design, right? Those are just extra little keywords to kind of get you over that bump to say, you know, what is the actual end product that I'm buying. So a lot of little things can make for a good design. Some things are bad design choices. You know, it's on a spectrum. So you can think of, you know, I've listed just a couple here. Are you pointing at your monitor? Do you have all of your greasy fucking fingers up on the monitor? That's something to think of, right? So if you have your fingers all over the bezel, is that going to track fingerprints? Is the bezel made of plastic, which means it would crack easy? Is it made of metal, so it's going to be heavy? Is the base adjustable? Can you rotate the monitor? If you're one of those weird fucking freaks that use your monitor in the long way, right? So you rotate it 90 degrees either way. Is it going to look nice on your desk? Like I said, when you think about ability, you got to think about your end product. Okay, that's the master race way. That's the master race way of thinking about this shit. Another thing, if you're mounting it on a wall or if you have a stand mount for your desk, is the monitor VESA compatible, which means it has the standards for the screws, for the brackets, for different type of for mounts. So if you buy a mount, right, you go on Amazon, Google monitor mount, TV mount, it'll tell you if it's VESA compatible, and 99% of the time they are. So that's what we're talking about here. Is it easy to mount? Is it on the standard to mount? screen size. This is kind of obvious, right? Physical size fucking matters. Ask your mom, right? So the screen size here, 23, that's measured diagonally. Okay, so that's corner to corner. Now, keep in mind, if you're measuring corner to corner like this, sometimes you're measuring on the bezel. You don't measure on the bezel when you get this number, okay? The panel that's inside, if you actually do have a bezel, now this monitor in particular is frameless, but if you have a monitor that has a bezel, keep in mind that the panel that's actually inside of the bezel may extend into the bezel. So if you're actually measuring, you may get a different result than what is actually listed on the monitor specs. So for instance, if this particular model had a bezel and I tried to measure, I may get 22.5 inches. You're gonna think, where's my fucking 0.5 inches? 0.5 inches can matter. Ask my girlfriend. Fucking, you know, just know the bezel can throw off that number. Another thing, how big is too big? Now, if you think about like right now, I'm sitting at my desk, I'm looking at this screen. I'm right fucking up to my monitor, so it's very close to me. So even though my monitor is pretty small, because I'm so close to it, I'm viewing more. It's like fucking, you know, this is not scientific. Just sit close to a TV screen and we'll get bigger because you're closer to it. So consider how big you need compared to where you sit, okay? And ask yourself, is it gonna hurt my neck if I need to look up and down to see everything, right? If you don't have very good peripheral vision, that's something to consider. Will it physically hurt me if I use this monitor? Which it sounds kind of silly, but I know people that have been affected by having the wrong size of monitor. So consider that. Response time. So this is a very important one for gamers in particular. So on this monitor, we can see 5 millisecond GTG response time. So what does that mean? Okay. GTG, let's just get that out of the way. So that's gray to gray measurement. So what that means is if I have a pixel on the screen, the pixel will start gray, turn to white, and then turn back to gray. The amount of time that it takes to do that is the response time. So for this particular model, it will take 5 milliseconds for that to happen. Why is that important? The lower response time that you have, the better it is for gaming. I'm not going to get into the specifics as to why, but 5 milliseconds seems to be that kind of PCMR kind of recommended number that you should go for. So that's going to be the number that you're going to stick with. This is also the reason why TV monitors are not recommended for actual PC use, especially gaming. Again, this is kind of like a gaming related slide. So TV response times usually suck, okay? They are intended for other things. Are you thinking like, oh, fucking console gamers, what am I gonna do on my Game Station 4? Well, those things are tailored to work in the living room. Your device is tailored to work in a home office, in wherever you will be gaming. So you have to buy and think about different equipment in those different use cases. They're designed differently. Very tiny changes in those things, but they require different setups. Panel type. So this is a big one, especially for confusion. People seem to really trip up on this. However, even though it looks like a big list, there's actually not a lot of different types of panels that you can actually go out and buy. So when you say, yes, I'm going to buy a flat screen PC monitor, chances are that is an LCD screen. What do we mean by LCD? That's kind of like, it's the common ancestor. So all different, hold on, I gotta drink some wine. Holy shit. This information is so fucking dense, excuse me. So, LCD is the common ancestor. Almost all of your flat screens today are born out of the LCD manufacturing type. So that's the way that in the different types of screens that are pressed together with certain things in between them. Everything else after that is just a different iteration of technology on top of LCD? Does that make sense? I'm asking you a question. I don't fucking know. I can't hear you. LED, right. So this is a big one right now. LED means that the backlight of the actual fucking monitor is a light emitting diode. So what does that mean for you? It means higher contrast, and it means your power bill is a little lower. So it's kind of the de facto choice if you have the money for it. You're going to spend a little bit more on LED. Just keep that in mind. The TFT, that was kind of the first generation upgrade to actual LCD. So you're getting better colors, getting better contrast, your blacks look darker. It's a very common type of monitor now. And moving off from there, you introduce a couple of different techs. The two most important ones are TN, which is a type of TFT LCD monitor. It's just better viewing angles, better contrast ratios, and IPS is the king right now in plane switching. So if you get a monitor with this tech, it's just way better than any of the other techs out there, provided that you have the correct backlighting. So LED, OLED, all that kind of shit. And I know I didn't put OLED on this. I didn't really feel like it was too much of a difference from LED, so I didn't bother mentioning it. IPS, best type for common PC monitors out there. If you have the money to go for IPS, you absolutely should. The just changing the color spectrum for IPS, it makes a very big difference on the actual quality that you get picture-wise on your monitor. It just looks great. Aspect ratio. So on this listing in particular, now, I'm gonna brag on Newegg. Usually they're really good, but when it comes to actually writing these, they don't write them. The manufacturer does. So I've got to bitch about Asus here for a second. They put widescreen. Now it seems like that would be an easy term to understand, but we actually need a little bit more information than that. Widescreen just means it's better than full screen. So full screen was on the old shitty monitors from our past, right? The big cathode ray tubes, all that kind of shit. It was a very blocky resolution aspect ratio. So widescreen is the more rectangular thing, the more common one today. Almost all monitors are widescreen now. When we say widescreen, we typically mean 16 by 9 or 16 by 10. 16 by 9 being the much more common one. It's just a very good aspect ratio. So what does that mean? What do those numbers actually mean? It means if you go across the top of the screen, for every 16 pixels, you have 9 pixels going down the other side. So you get the perfect sort of rectangle. So if you were to resize it, and right, there's different sizes for this monitor, 21.5, 23, 27. They're all the same type of rectangle. They're just sized differently. That's it. That's aspect ratio. Monitors, I don't know whether... I'm just buying one. I don't know whether it put monitors... Fucking... Cool. Video interface, right, so video interface, a little bit more important than people like to let on. So we're talking about ports. So I see here in the title, HDMI. At the bottom, they bothered to mention D-sub, which, useless knowledge here. D-sub just means VGA, it's just another name for VGA. So let's run through your common fucking video connectors of today. So the first one is VGA. Does VGA suck? Yeah, it sucks because it's analog. So think about what's going on inside of your computer. Your computer is digital. Holy shit, I know that's blowing your fucking mind right now. Your computer is digital. It wants to output a digital signal, but VGA is analog. So it must convert digital to analog conversion. Anytime you convert like that, you lose information. So it's lossy. It is not lossless. DVI. So that's the white connector. I hope people know what DVI is at this point. I mean, it's fucking old to me. I don't, you know. So does DVI suck? Yeah. You're getting bad color on it. There's no audio and data streams like there are with the big boys. So the big boys are HDMI and DisplayPort. HDMI used to suck. It does not suck anymore. The cables stay the same. The how do you say, the interfaces get better. So as HDMI upgraded to 2.1 and DisplayPort Even since DisplayPort has kind of been around from the beginning, it also got better. So we're getting huge resolutions. I think DisplayPort 1.4 can support all the way up to 10K, 120 hertz. We'll talk about refresh rate and hertz, all that. We'll talk about that later. The cream of the crop, baby. The best out there, best technology. So if you have the choice, go for those upgraded technologies. Native resolution. So this is a kind of a common one, but boy, do people get it fucking wrong really quick. So in this listing, we see 1920 by 1080. That is 1080p, right? That's definitely something that you should be familiar with, even if you're a fucking noob. You should know what that is. 1080p. So that's the resolution your monitor was built for. So it's not just resolution, it is native resolution. So if you think about your monitor that's in front of you, there are, you can sort of think of it as hard-coded pixels, right? There are 1920 horizontal pixels, and there are 1080 vertical pixels that make up the rectangle of what you're looking at if you're on a 1080p monitor. So it's hard-coded like that. Your monitor lusts over its native resolution. It wants its native resolution. That's the picture that looks best on it. Any other resolution, you're fucking with God, okay? It wants 1080p, you should give it 1080p. What if you're using a lower resolution? That is what we call upscaling. So just because you set your computer to 720p, that doesn't mean that what you're looking at is actually 720p. You're still looking at a 1080p monitor. It's just your picture must fit on that screen now. So it is called upscaling, and it looks ugly as shit, especially if the aspect ratio is incorrect between the two of those. Different features in text. There's all sorts of little shit that Asus and all the other manufacturers come up with, like this eye care and flicker-free technology, vivid pixel. Most of it is bullshit. Some of it is actually kind of useful. Do your research. I can't say more than that. Viewing angle. Not very important, but you can think of viewing angle, you know, the wider you get, the more people can sit shoulder to shoulder by you and see your monitor. So if you don't want other people to have a clear view of your monitor, get a smaller viewing angle. Otherwise, get a bigger viewing angle. Speakers. Don't use fucking monitor speakers. I should not have to explain this to you. Contrast ratio. So contrast ratio, again, kind of takes a backseat to some of the other numbers that we're covering here, but the bigger number on the left, the better the contrast. The better the contrast, that's a difference between whites and blacks. Now, this does not indicate how dark the blacks are. That is done by your screen technology, and sometimes by the other technologies that, like we just covered, some of the minor technologies can improve that. But that is not what contrast ratio is. It's the difference, how bright the difference is between whites and blacks. So that's a lot of content, right? Right? No, actually. There's more than that. Now, just to explain, this Newegg listing, it looked like a lot of information, but it is inconclusive. So we actually need to look at another fucking listing. Yeah, I know. Isn't it bullshit? I wish, you know, all of this information could be just be so accessible and so easy to fucking get, but no. No, bruh. Gotta make it complicated. So we're gonna go to the Acer Recertified website, which they're pretty cool. They've been having some really cool sales lately, so I decided to nag on them for a little bit. So here's a listing on the Acer Recertified website for one of their widescreen monitors. So we're gonna go through a couple of the newer stuff that's in this listing. So the first one, UW, ultra wide. So why is ultra wide so important? Because it's fucking awesome, right? So it's a much wider monitor than what you're used to. The aspect ratio is usually 21:9, which means you get a super wide rectangle. It looks fucking awesome, and you can definitely show it off. Really cool feature. You get a lot more pixels if you do this. Really cool stuff. QHD. In this case, it stands for Quad High Definition. That's 1440p. 1440p is kind of a very gold standard right now. It's the middle child between 1080p, and the platinum standard, which is 4K. So 4K is definitely the brass ring that everyone wants to grab right now, but actually 1440p is a great fucking picture to look at. So definitely consider it. Yeah. G-Sync. So just to briefly cover on G-Sync, this kind of fits into the same category as little features that manufacturers can add, except this one is not specific to manufacturers. It is specific to NVIDIA. So if you're not living under a rock, NVIDIA is the video card manufacturer. Okay, so if you have an NVIDIA card inside of your computer and your monitor supports G-Sync, your monitor can actually talk to your video card, a talkback feature to your video card, to help sync the frames that your video card is giving out. Just trust me on this, it's black magic and it is fucking awesome, which is why it's a pretty penny. Oh, by the way, going back to this, FreeSync is the AMD equivalent of G-Sync. Yeah. Refresh rate, cool. So this is a huge one, which is hilarious because the Newegg listing didn't have fucking refresh rate. So we're going to talk about this. 60 hertz. What does 60 hertz mean? That means if you run a game at 60 frames per second, the frames will evenly fall inside of your monitor, which is kind of the same thing that we were talking about resolution. If your native resolution is 1080p and your game is at 1080p, then everything just kind of falls in line. It's all God-given. Well, it's the same thing for refresh rates. So what happens when we don't have a game at 60 FPS? Well, let's look at the better situation, which is 200 frames per second, right? So I'm running Doom Unlocked that I've got all these fucking frames. Your monitor is not going to know what to do with that information, so it's actually going to truncate some of those frames, which is pretty fucking sad. The sadder situation here is if you're running a game at 30 frames per second and your monitor supports 60 hertz, well, your monitor is gonna fucking not be happy. So it's gonna have to do a little bit of extra things, and depending on the monitor, it can do a thing called backlight strobing, which means it's gonna insert a blank or black frame in between every other frame to give kind of the sense that your game is running at 60 FPS, but it's still going to appear as 30 FPS. It's just that your monitor has to do something about it, since it always has to do 60 flashes of the backlight per second. Another thing that smarter monitors can do, monitors actually do have little processors in them to kind of figure things out. It can interpolate, or in other words, it can guess the frames that are in between the missing information. It kind of guess, like for instance, if you're playing a game and you have a character moving across a field, the processor inside of your monitor can guess where your character would be visually, not logically, but visually, and sort of insert that frame, which can cause issues with motion blur, but that's a different subject altogether. The last thing we're going to talk about is curved monitors. So curved monitors, is it bullshit? Yeah, kind of. So the main pro of having a curved monitor is it's kind of like wearing a headset, right? So if you wear one of those, like an HTC Vive, you put it on your head, you're very immersed because everything is wrapped around you. Now, this is a much less awesome example because your monitor is not wrapping around you. However, because it's bent, you're getting a more viewing area of what's happening on the screen. So the cons to this are much more extravagant. This can cause issues with reflections if you have any backlight behind you, major issues if you have a curved monitor, as well as shitty viewing angles. You have to be sitting at a very precise spot to actually experience that immersive screen area, that screen real estate. So are you considering actually spending money to this? Wow, what a fucking loser. So what's the most important thing out of all of this? Fucking money. Like, comment, subscribe. Love you, babies. Bye-bye.